Turn the pages of any early 2000s beauty publication, and a uniform aesthetic emerges. The industry demanded physical perfection, filling media with flawless, heavily retouched models that established a standard no actual human being could reach. Companies built their business models on aspiration. The math was remarkably direct. Show consumers an impossible ideal, make them feel inadequate by comparison, and then sell them the cure for the exact insecurity the marketing had manufactured. This hyper-stylized imagery dominated the visual landscape. City streets were saturated with airbrushed billboards, reinforcing a constant baseline of physical inadequacy. Operating in the middle of this market was Dove. They were a purely utilitarian brand, selling functional, moisturizing soap in a space otherwise entirely dedicated to high-fashion glamour and aspiration. In a strategic shift, Dove identified the beauty industry's toxic mirror as their primary competitor, moving beyond the functional benefits of soap to address the psychological toll of these manufactured standards. To understand the scale of the problem, the company commissioned a global research study asking women across different continents a simple set of questions about their own self-esteem. Out of the worldwide female population surveyed, only 2% described themselves as beautiful. That single data point triggered a strategic departure. Dove launched the Campaign for Real Beauty, committing to a long-term position against that deficit in self-worth. They replaced professional, airbrushed models with everyday consumers. The resulting billboards featured diverse groups of women, completely unretouched, posing in plain white underwear. It was a significant corporate risk. A giant consumer goods company was directly challenging the exact beauty standards that drove sales across the rest of the industry. This initial push laid the groundwork. 9 years later, the brand would use this foundation to launch a psychological experiment, testing the absolute limits of human self-doubt. In the spring of 2013, a production team set up inside this bright, airy San Francisco loft. Inside, a curtain hung across the middle of the room. On one side sat a woman. On the other sat Gil Zamora, an FBI-trained forensic sketch artist. Zamora could not see the women. He simply asked them to describe their own faces, and he drew exactly what they detailed. The vocabulary the subjects used was quietly brutal. They instructed Zamora to draw fat faces, protruding chins, and sad, tired eyes. They itemized their flaws with total conviction. Then the women left. A stranger who had met each subject only briefly before the experiment took their place. Zamora asked the stranger to describe the exact same woman. The strangers detailed lovely eyes, thin faces, and friendly, open expressions. Zamora drew a second portrait. The women were brought back into the room to see the two portraits hung side by side. The self-described sketches looked older, heavier, and visibly sadder. The stranger sketches were brighter, more accurate, and lighter. The women stood in heavy, tearful silence. The side-by-side portraits provided undeniable visual evidence. The subjects were forced to realize how heavily their own internal monologue had penalized them, and how much their distorted self-perception had actually cost them. Released in April 2013, the short film of this experiment resonated instantly. Within a month, Real Beauty sketches crossed 100 million views, outperforming every beauty ad that had come before it. This map illustrates the speed of its global proliferation. View count nodes rapidly multiplied across borders as the video was translated into dozens of languages and shared across continents simultaneously. The campaign broke traditional marketing rules. It was a commercial for soap that never once showed the product, mentioned its ingredients, or asked the viewer to make a purchase. The behavioral psychology driving this spread was personal. Users were not distributing a corporate asset. They were sending a message to their mothers, sisters, and daughters, validating a private pain that millions of people carried. The video named the silent gap between how we see ourselves and how the world sees us. It demonstrated a consistent rule of digital media. Shared emotional experiences outpaced the reach of traditional product information. The campaign faced valid criticism. Some argued that by reassuring women they were pretty, the video still reinforced physical appearance as a woman's primary source of value. A deeper complication lay in the corporate machinery behind the message. Dove is owned by Unilever, a massive multinational conglomerate. While Unilever funded Dove's self-esteem mission, they simultaneously managed the Axe body spray brand, which at the time ran global campaigns that heavily objectified women and reduced them to sexual props. Further complicating matters, the parent company generated massive global revenue from products like Fair and Lovely, selling skin lightening creams in international markets by directly leveraging local colorism and beauty insecurities. This creates an uncomfortable paradox. It raises the question of whether a corporation can authentically campaign against consumer insecurity while simultaneously profiting from it in other sectors of its portfolio. Taking a moral stand in business inherently invites scrutiny of the entire house. Dove remained a compromised messenger, yet their shift toward purpose-led marketing produced tangible results. Over 2 decades, the campaign's profits funded self-esteem workshops that reached tens of millions of young students in classrooms worldwide, turning an ad campaign into a functioning educational program. That longevity highlights the difference between a fleeting marketing moment and a true brand platform. While competitors shifted tactics, this platform remained consistent for 20 years, prioritizing long-term cultural positioning over short-term sales cycles. The brand eventually institutionalized these values, taking a permanent pledge to end the digital distortion of women's bodies in its global imagery. The sketches survive as a study in the complexity of modern branding. They show that even within a flawed corporate structure, a message can resonate if it identifies a truth people have carried in private for decades, that you are more beautiful than you think.